He gets more attention than the deities do. He's getting more attention than the deities. Because he's a little deity. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Vihari Kopidana Bhava Grivadari Jaya Grivadari Kopidana Bhava Grivadari Jaya Grivadari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Yamunadira Bharachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Yamunadira Bharachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Yamunadira Bharachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Grivadari Jaya Grivadari Gopijana Vallabha Grivadari Jaya Grivadari Yatsodanandana Radhadana Ranjana Jaya Radhadana Ranjana Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramhams Brahmadacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman His Divine Grace Shri Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribo Slava Zarani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Grangi Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Taramane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Shinuvadi Paskyatyade Sadharna Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shigaro Shiuta Parakamalam Shigaram Vaishnavam Scha Shirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Prijana Saitam Shna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Sakans Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudhadevi Pranamami Hri Priye Vanchakapa Drubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 18, King Yayati regains his youth. Text number 33. Devayani gave birth to Yadu and Turvasu, and Sharmista gave birth to Druyu, Anu, and Puru. They all ended with a U. That's what they had in common. When the proud Devayani understood from outside sources that Shamista was pregnant by her husband, she was frenzied with anger. Thus she departed for her father's house. What is this? So there's some expression in English or something. There's nothing stronger than the wrath of a woman. King Ayati was very lusty. Who was very lusty? Followed his wife, caught her and tried to appease her by speaking pleasing words and massaging her feet. But she could not satisfy her by any means. Sukracharya was extremely angry. You untruthful fool, lusting after women. You have done a great wrong, he said. I therefore curse you to be attacked and disfigured by old age and invalidity. That's your father-in-law. Text 37. Oh, let's see. Shri Yayatiruvacha Atriptos mi yadya. Let's see how this goes. Atriptos miyadya kamanam Brahman duhitri smate Vatsyasyatam yata kasmam kamam vayasayo bidasyati. Shri Yayatiruvacha Atriptos myadya kamanam Brahman duhitri smate Brahman duhitari smate Vyayasyatam yatakamam Vyayasayo bidasyati. Shriyatirvacha Adriptos myadya kamanam Brahmando hitari smate Vyasyayatam yata kamam Vyasyayo bidasyati. Shriyatirvacha Atriptos mi adyakamam Ramanda hitari smate Yachaya satam yatakamam Vyasaya vidasyati. Ladies, Shri Uvacha Atriptos Myadya Kamanam Brahmandehi Tarismate Yasyat Yatam Yatha Kamam Vyayasayo Vidasyati Shri Ayati Uvacha. King Ayati said, Atripta, unsatisfied. Asmi, I am. Adya, until now. Kamanam, to satisfy my lusty desires. Brahman, O learned Brahmana. Dihitari, in connection with the daughter. Sma, in the past. Te, your. Yat yasyatam, just exchanged. Yatha kamam, as long as you are lusty. Vayasa, with youth. Ya avidasyati, of one who agrees to exchange her old age for his youth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. King Ayati said, O learned, worshipable Brahmana, I have not yet satisfied my lusty desires with your daughter. Sukracharya then replied, you may exchange your old age with someone who will agree to transfer his youth to you. Purport. When King Ayati said he had not yet satisfied his lusty desires with Shukracharya's daughter, Sukracharya saw that it was against the interests of his own daughter for Ayati to continue in old age and invalidity, for certainly his lusty daughter would not be satisfied. Therefore, Shukracharya blessed his son-in-law by saying that he could exchange his old age for someone else's youth. He indicated that if Yayati's son would exchange his youth for Yayati's old age, Yati could continue to enjoy sex with Devayani. How romantic. And it goes on. Actually, we're coming to the one verse that has a really purport to it. But we'll read on a little bit. When Yayati received this benediction from Shukracharya, he requested his eldest son, my dear son Yadu, please give me your youth in exchange for my old age and invalidity. My dear son, I am not yet satisfied in my sexual desires, but if you are kind to me, you can take old age given by your maternal grandfather. I may take your youth so I may enjoy life for a few years more. Apparently, in that age, you can just exchange your youth for old age, of course. You have to give something in return. This is the nature of purport. This is the nature of lusty desires. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:20, it is said, Kamaistaistaridigyana. When one is to attach his sense gratification, he actually loses his sense. The word rita jnana refers to one who has lost his sense. This is an example. The father shamelessly asks his son to exchange youth for old age. Of course, the entire world is under such illusion. Therefore, it is said that everyone is pramatak, or exclusively mad. Nunam pramata kurute vikarma. One becomes almost like a madman. He indulges in sex and sense gratification. Sex and sense gratification can be controlled. However, one achieves perfection when he one achieves perfection when he has no desires for sex. This is possible only when one is fully Krishna conscious. Idavadi mama cheta Krishna padara vinde nava navarasa daman yudyatam rantimos asit Tadavadi bhata nari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara shustu nishdivanam cha. Since I've been engaged in the trance and loving service of Krishna, realizing every new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, and my lips curl with distaste. Sexual desire can be stopped only when one is fully Krishna conscious, and not otherwise. As long as one has desires for sex, one must change his body and transmigrate from one body to another to enjoy sex in different species or forms. But although the forms may differ, the business of sex is the same. Therefore it is said, punak punas charvita charvananam. Those who are very much attached to sex transmigrate from one body to another, with the same business of chewing the chewed, tasting sex enjoyment as a dog, sex enjoyment as a hog, sex enjoyment as a demigod, and so on. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Taramane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Satarna. There is one story of one man who had a very faithful wife, but this man was invalid, crippled. But he desired to have sex with a very famous prostitute, but he was poor, so he couldn't afford it. So his wife, knowing this, she was so chaste, she went to the house of the prostitute and worked as a servant, as a maidservant to this particular prostitute. And then finally the prostitute asked her, "What can I do for you?" Then she explained she had an invalid husband who wanted to have sex with the prostitute, but he couldn't afford to do it. So therefore she was working hard to help him. So the prostitute said, "No problem, just bring him over." So the man came over, and the prostitute gave the man 2 cups of lassi or something. One of them was in a golden cup, and the other one was in an iron cup. And she asked him to taste them. So he tasted both of the drinks, and she said, "Which is better?" And he said, "Well, they both taste the same." So she said, "Well, what's the difference? They're both the same." So similarly, sex for this species of life or this particular person is exactly the same taste as sex with any other species of life or any other person. So then the man realized that his wife was so chaste, and he was decided to offer respects to this particular prostitute and went home. So that's the Krishna has said, Daivi Yesha Gunamayi, Mamamaya Dharatya, Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite. This divine energy of mine is difficult to overcome, that those who have taken shelter of me, can easily cross behind it. So this material nature is empowered by Krishna for a delusion. And what is the delusion? Urdvam mulam adakshakam ashvatam prahur avya. The illusion is that we can become something other than a little tiny spirit soul. Little tiny spirit soul, he has no desire. Instead of trying to become Radha and Krishna, the soul has a desire to serve Radha and Krishna due to the unlimited pleasure from those loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna. And when one participates in those loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna and their associates in the spiritual world, then one is actually engaged in one's real position. But instead, we've acquired material bodies, and although we may be imagining that we're participating in loving exchanges, but we're just experiencing the exchange of one dead body to another dead body. But the material nature puts us into illusion, so we're actually imagining that I'm Radha, or I'm Krishna, or I'm Mickey Mouse, or Minnie Mouse, or I'm Tarzan, or Jane, or Romeo or Juliet. by simply observing this drama that's going on due to our false identification with material nature, we're actually imagining we're participating in some kind of romantic or loving affair. Or all the other rasas are also there. But the adi rasa is sex life. That's the main taste in the material world, without which there would be not much going on here. It would be kind of boring. As a matter of fact, it is said that Brahma created man and he had nothing to do. So he was bored. So then Brahma created woman and he was fully engaged. So that's the material energy. We want to have this imagination that somehow or another I'm engaging in some kind of lila. But these leelas are not the same as Krishna lila, although we'd like to think like that due to illusion. In any case, as we can see here, that there is a place for this working out the lila so that eventually we can give it up. Otherwise, if we simply restrain the senses are completely restrained from their objects, and we dwell on them, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, which I always forget the first word. So it should be 3. Kamendriyani samyamya yaste manasasmaran indriyartam vimudatma mityatra uchite. Kamendriyani samyamya, one who controls his senses, but his mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Yastu indriyani manasa niyamya varajitejana kamendriya karma yogam asakta savishishite. On the other hand, who engages his active organs in devotional service and works in devotion without attachment, he is by far superior. So there's no progress in simply artificially restraining the senses from their objects and then thinking about them. It's almost like if you have you're trying to close the jaws of a crocodile. If you're very strong, you may be able to do it. But as soon as you become tired, then immediately you lose your grip on the crocodile and he eats you. So trying to control the senses but not engaging the mind in Krishna consciousness, one will be defeated by the illusory entity eventually. As I've told the story many times about Rajneesh. You heard of Rajneesh? Osha. You never heard of Rajneesh? Osha? Is that his name? Osho. You heard him. Yeah, so he was a famous brahmachari at one time. And he became proud. So he put an article in the newspapers, the major newspapers in India, challenging any woman to have him fall down. So one famous prostitute in Delhi took up the challenge, spent the night with him, and the next day he wrote an article for the newspaper, Liberation Through Sex. So this is the material nature where one is actually thinking that I can conquer the material nature simply by my great prowess or my great determination. Like Vishwamrita, after all, he meditated for 60,000 years, and simply by hearing the ankle bells of Menaka, he opened his eyes, and as the Mafia says, material nature gave him a deal he couldn't refuse. And it took him 100 years to figure out that he had fallen down from his exalted position. He had a daughter named Shakuntala. I think they actually abandoned Shakuntala, whatever. In any case, he went back to meditation for another 60,000 years, and Indra sent another Apsara. And as soon as Vishwamrita heard the ankle bells again of this new Apsara, he became so angry that someone's coming here to waste another of his 60,000 years. He opened his eyes, and from his eyes came flames, and he burnt the Apsara to ashes. Pretty dangerous occupation sometimes, being an Apsara. And there's no insurance either for an Indraloka. And even if there was, who's going to collect it? In any case, now he fell down due to anger. So he had to go back and meditate for another 60,000 years before Indra gave up, and Brahma came and gave him second initiation. It took him 160,000 years to get a second initiation. Luckily, Kali Yuga is more merciful. So the point is that simply by restraining the senses, it won't work. Therefore, there is such a thing as grihastha life, where there is a dharma viruddha bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. One can engage in sex life under regulated principles in order to produce children, to raise in Krishna consciousness, and that's considered to be glorious. Although it's still sex life, it's not like it's become spiritual or something, but still, because one is restraining the senses from their objects and fixing the mind upon Krishna, doing things under regulation, will actually purify one so that one can give it up eventually and just fix the mind upon Krishna without having to be impelled for a sex life. But even in the liberated stage, like Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, sometimes he met different ladies, such as, what was the name? Well, he had one child named Baburahan. He met one lady who was the princess of the Nagas. And he gave them children. Similarly, he got married to Subhadra. But he was transcendental. But as a pastime for Krishna, he showed how Kshatriyas perform their duties, but without attachment. So this is also, there are no Kshatriyas nowadays, so it can't be imitated. Still, proper household life is ideal so that eventually one can see, if one cultivates Krishna consciousness simultaneously, one can actually experience the happiness of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, one is not attached anymore for producing children, because their happiness in Krishna consciousness is so great, everything else seems insignificant. That doesn't mean that one becomes angry at one's wife, or one becomes angry at the world, or one becomes cold towards the family. Actually, if one becomes Krishna conscious, one actually becomes really loving, actually loving towards everyone, including one's family. Material nature, where so-called romance and love is actually just a step towards greed and anger and delusion. It's not a step towards prema. But real prema means that one will actually love everyone. Like Srila Prabhupada, who actually loved everyone and helped everyone to come to the platform of love for Krishna. Which where, if the little spark is in the fire, then it glows. And Krishna is the fire, unlimited fire of prema, of love, and Srimati Radharani. So one enters into that fire of prema, and one's actual normal prema is reawakened, and one loves everyone through loving Krishna. But if one doesn't go through that process, then as we can see here, that at least in the Vedic culture, there was some kind of civilization where if the Ayati was not restored to his youth, then Devayani would have suffered. Not that she would have went out and looked for another man. Although she was the cause of the Ayatis becoming invalid and getting old age, but she wouldn't say, oh, you're an old man, I think I need another model, new edition. No, she would have stayed chaste because they're civilized. And he would have become renounced. Because although it appears that they had ongoing sex life for many, many years, still it was on the basis of culture, of regulation. Not, at least we can understand, it doesn't give the details because it's unnecessary, but at least they didn't chase after other people. They remained a couple throughout their whole life. And when they came to the platform of realizing punak punas charvita charvananam, then they both renounced together and became pure in consciousness. In any case, so this is telling us that what the results of properly following household life is, and at the same time cultivating Krishna consciousness, that in the course of time, one will not become angry or frustrated and then renounce the family due to anger and frustration. One will simply become detached because of attachment to Krishna. And therefore, whether one takes sannyas or he goes on pilgrimage with the wife, then one is simply absorbed in Krishna consciousness and relates to all living entities, including the family, in the same Krishna conscious way. And one doesn't go through the process of proper household life and renounces prematurely and dwells on material sense gratification, then one will simply have to transmigrate from one body to another until one realizes through the process of acquiring a higher taste that this is tuchavat. It's not really so important. What's important is Krishna and Krishna consciousness. But that takes experience. Theoretically, we can hear about it. Unusual bhajan for the... Okay. So, it can't be, it has to be, Krishna consciousness has to be experienced, has to be revealed to us. It's not that we can, by some power of our determination, or by our effort, or even by our activities, we have to show Krishna somehow or another that we're worthy of the revelation, that we deserve it, that we want it, first of all, and we're willing to do what's necessary to get it. And so when that revelation comes, then the higher taste comes gradually. It doesn't come all at once. It's not that we wake up one day and we're in the spiritual world. Gradually, the ecstasy comes, the prema, the love comes, the realizations along with that come, and then gradually we become attached to Krishna, and gradually we become detached from material desires. So it takes a while. But it takes the practice of Krishna consciousness. Suitable practice, and then gradually detachment. We have to want detachment, but not artificially. We should want it naturally to come. Therefore, household life for vast majority of people is necessary, but grihastha life, not grihamaiti life. Grihamaiti life will simply result in unlimited frustration, problems, etc. And grihastha life has its problems, but they're insignificant compared to grihamaiti life. They're tolerable. So I'll stop there. Any questions or comments? Everyone's convinced. Okay. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.